Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you, and welcome to another episode or event recording of the Leadership and Retention Lab. My name's Julie Teal. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you if we haven't met yet. And my company is Teal Talent Strategy. And what we do as a company is we help small to medium sized professional services firms focus on building a culture of retention so that their founders and owners can focus on growing the company. Because I believe very strongly that workforce stability is the foundation for all productivity, all the good stuff that you want to build in your firm. So it's great to have you here today. And the title of this that hopefully caught your attention and brought you here today, we're going to be discussing organizational clarity. Guessing is not a strategy. And if you have employees and leaders that are guessing about their role, about where they fit, about how the organization is designed, or about communications and guidance on direction, they're not going to be as successful, and you're not going to be successful as a result. Before we get started, I want to do just a quick shout out to all the University of Illinois alumni that I've been connecting with lately on LinkedIn. Great to see you. I know many of you were invited to this live stream. So either you're seeing me live or you're seeing me on the replay. So I just wanted to say hello to all of my University of Illinois friends out there, and I loved my time there. I got both an undergraduate and graduate degree from the University of Illinois. It's opened so many doors for me over the years, as I know it has for all of you, and just wanted to just say a warm hello and welcome, and looking forward to getting to know you better. So I always like to start talking about, as I really thought about, my role as a retention strategy expert, and bringing all I've done over the years into HR together. I put that into a model, and I really wanted to look both at the research and my personal experience, because again, research is great, but practical knowledge about what works makes a difference too. And I put that into what I call the growth model. So I'm going to pull that up, and this is always fun because I figured out how to do this on the system. So this is my growth model right here. And I'm not going to go through every piece of it, but every one of these are factors that, as I look at an organization, or I have looked at organizations over the years, these are the different levers that I've pulled over the years to help companies create better cultures, and cultures where people love to stay and love to grow. So today we've covered the first two. So we've covered G and R, and next we're going to cover O. So today our focus is going to be on organizational clarity. So clear roles and direction. So I've got several points that I always start off with several points there. And what I'm going to do is I'm also pulling up the chat. So if you happen to be here with us live, you can certainly put a comment in the chat and I'll be able to see it. So if you see me looking over here, I'm just checking in on the chat to see what's going on. So please say hello if you're online today. I'd love to say hi back. But in the meantime, I'm going to jump in a little bit into organizational clarity. And I think that one of the experiences I've had many years ago was around a small office in a professional services context. So it was a small regional office, and all of a sudden they had 20% turnover, which was shocking, because lots of times in a smaller office, there's a close-knit community, and there really was. One of the issues is I got in and I met people and I was talking to them, that came out was that there was a ton of confusion about who was in charge. We had, as many professional services firms have, had a department structure and had a kind of local structure for reporting. And so people that were in one function weren't sure, do they report to the local guy or do they report to the regional person? And for some reason, that really made an impact on the team, and it helped bring that to, because I didn't, it's not something that I personally would have expected to be a big issue, but it did. It created a whole bunch of concerns and questions that we then were able to dive into and start to address. So, and by clarifying reporting, and in this case, we decided that it's more important that those local employees, no matter what their function, report in and get guidance from the local leaders than it was that they have that kind of the national structure. And by doing that, it really, and other things too, but that was a big factor for helping reduce turnover within the organization. So I've seen the power of this. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it today. And I just want to say hello to those of you that are here live with me. Thank you for being here. So hi, KJ, good to see you. Hello from India, and I hope I say your name right. It's Anshuman. So I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for joining us today. Looking for a good discussion, and as you have questions, please feel free to jump in. So I'm going to start with my first point. And when we think about organizational clarity and really building organizations with that positive, productive culture, people really need to know their roles. And when I say that, I'm not talking about job descriptions. So don't get me wrong, job descriptions are great. They're important for job postings, things like that. But job descriptions are typically not living, breathing documents. They're kind of one point in time, and they're often very generic in what they have to say. There's a whole lot more to every job than you can put on a job description. And one of the flags I'd like you to look for is if people are saying, if you're asking them to do something and either they're not doing it or they're saying, that's not my job, I think you have some organizational clarity problems there that need to be addressed. And the best way I know how to do this, and again, and especially in a growing small organization that's thriving, actually the job duties are going to continue to change quite significantly over time. And so not only do I think it's important, again, to just sit down and have a conversation about what you expect, the key deliverables of the job, and those sorts of things. I also think, as if you're in a fast growing company, having a conversation about kind of, instead of it talking about what's expected in the year, break it into smaller pieces. It may make sense to talk about this month what needs to be done, or this week what needs to be done. And in some cases, you can go as far as a quarter, but I think breaking expectations and conversations about the job into smaller pieces oftentimes is the key for finding role clarity. So, and then in addition to that, the way that you expect that job to interact with other departments is really important too, because it's a system. Companies are a system. The work gets done through multiple people. So clarifying, this is how we work with accounting. This is how we work with IT. This is how we work with the sales department. This is how we work with marketing. All of those clarifying discussions are really, really helpful. So that's where role clarity comes in, and something as you're taking a look at your organization and trying to identify, troubleshoot what's going to stand in the way of growth, that role clarity is essential. And so, and many of you as smaller organizations that are growing, embrace things like the EOS operating system. And that does a great job of helping you break it down, jobs into pieces and goals into pieces, so that there's constant communication about, this is what we've done now, this is what we're going to do next. Those are critical. So I think role clarity is really, really important. And I guess I'm curious, of the things that I've mentioned, are there other things that you've tried around role clarity that you have found very helpful? I would love to hear more and kind of give you a platform here and speak about that a little bit more. So if you can write that in the chat, I'd love to share your experiences with role clarity and how that works for you. While you're doing that, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is scope and organizational structure, which is, I know, especially when you're in a growing organization, it's oftentimes not fun and not desirable to sit down and put together an org chart. I know that probably makes some of you twitch, like an org chart. Ugh, that's really sometimes hard to do. However, I think a visual view of your organization, first of all, is incredibly helpful for what we just talked about, which is role clarity. In addition to that, it helps you kind of visualize where there may be issues and how communication moves around your organization. And specifically, the thing that I like to look at for growing organizations is manager scope. And what that means is looking at how many people are being managed by any one manager. And again, I've seen this over the years. Growing companies, it's exciting to be hiring, it's exciting to be bringing in new people. And oftentimes the focus is on the process for bringing in those new people, which is great. But oftentimes I've seen leaders suddenly have 10, 15, I've seen 30 or more direct reports in a very like huge growing organization. And my experience has been, and I'm interested in your experience, but I think if you want active, engaged leadership with people that need direction and are going to benefit from direction, I think if you get up to that 8 to 10 direct reports, it gets a little rough. Like it gets much harder for any individual manager to build a significant relationship with everyone and to have the time, frankly, to meet with everyone. And particularly in professional services, every leader is a working leader. Every leader has billable hours and clients and demands. So when you start adding in, an hour one-on-one every week or every other week with 10 or more people, that gets really, really tough to keep up with over time. And as we talked about the last time, frequent, consistent one on ones are one of the best ways to build deep, lasting relationships that retain talent. So I think that's one of those areas that is often missed when you're growing. And here's what I'll say about manager scope. So let's say you see that problem. Say you have leaders, and symptoms are things like you're constantly canceling your one on ones. You have leaders that are simply firefighting and having trouble getting to strategic work. Sometimes, and I'd say perhaps often, that's because of the manager scope. There's the balance between the time they have with their team and the time that they have for their clients, their own billable work is out of balance in some way. So those are the symptoms I'd say I often see when it comes to manager scope. And one of the things, though, is oftentimes there's some pushback when I talk about manager scope from leaders, and rightfully so, because you can't always afford to add, 3 more leaders onto your team. That's a reason why so many people have been put under that leader. Some of the creative solutions I've tried that I have often seen success with are creating lead roles. So the supervisor or the manager still is the one that does performance reviews and does that kind of big picture relationship and guidance of that individual. But if you create smaller, I guess, like pods or smaller sub teams, if you will, with a lead. So an experienced person that can provide daily guidance and direction, that can help with questions and training, putting a lead level in place. Again, you have to free up that lead to have the time and the right balance of their billable hours and their lead duties. But that's often a fairly inexpensive, reasonable way to create a layer without completely changing your organizational structure. Now, I'll also say sometimes you need to do that. So I'm not afraid to suggest that if that's what you need. But I just wanted to make sure that when you're looking at scope, it's not like an all or nothing proposition. There's a lot of gray area in how you structure leadership roles, lead roles, how the work gets done. So there are ways that you can structure it so it's not so overwhelming for the leader, and that you give them some breathing room to really manage and lead their teams. So with that, I'm going to go on to the next topic. So this is the 3 things I wanted to cover. First thing was role clarity. Second one was scope and specifically span of control for managers. And then the third one is communication practices. And I am certainly not a internal communications expert. However, I'm going to share a few things that I do think work, because a lot of the times when you have a clarity issue, it's because the right information is not being communicated to the right people at the right time. So given that, you need to take a look at communication processes. And I think that the rule of thumb that I have always been taught, and it's going to seem like a lot, but you're supposed to communicate a message 7 different times in order to really have it understood and kind of internalized by someone. And especially when you're talking about organizational communications, where you're dealing with people listening from a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives with a lot of different things on their mind. Now, I'm not saying you should create 7 communications, but I think that's a good push to say that telling people one thing one time is not enough. So that's why I'm talking about communication. So anytime you're rolling out a message about your values. Sometimes you're rolling out your values. Sometimes you're talking about customer wins. Sometimes you're talking about new processes. Maybe you're rolling out again right around the corner. We're going to be talking about employee benefits and open enrollment. You have to think of it through multiple communications in multiple manners. So, and I'll just give an example. So, anytime you have a in-person regular, some sort of regular town hall or team meeting or regular company huddle that you do, you can call it whatever you want. It can be as formal as informal as you want, but making sure that you have a nice clean agenda going into those to make sure you're covering specific points. So being able to walk through and really communicate and open up for questions in a verbal way with people, whether it's online or in person. So having some sort of town hall, having some sort of email follow-up, having some sort of manager questions. So as you start to have questions coming in, sending out, these questions have come up, here's the answer, sending it to your managers so everyone has the same information and is saying the same thing. That type of multiple channels for information is really important in order to establish clarity. And one of the fun things I did years ago that I'll share with you is that we were launching for the year and we came up with our 5 goals for the year. And we had a kickoff meeting about our 5 goals for the year. Now this was in person, but we had a little badge card made up with the 5 things that people could easily attach to the badge that they used to get in and out of the building. So they had that with them. And every time we started a meeting with the whole company, we started with those 5 things. So every time they heard from us, they were hearing about the 5 things. And so those are ways that you can really help make sure that people are getting the message about what's important and where the company is going. And as a result, where they fit into that bigger picture. And then I'll add on to this. This was a fun way we ended up helping people really internalize the message is that, I don't know, this is kind of goofy, but it was fun. We had a few people, I was the HR leader for the company. So I would randomly pull people aside at different levels in the organization and in different departments. And I would say, hey, can you tell me at least 3 of those 5 that are on the list? And if you do, I've got a gift card for you. And so they were told that this was going to happen. And so people did take the extra time to actually memorize those goals. And then what I did too is if someone answered correctly, I asked them to go ask someone else the same question. And if they were right, I would again give that person a gift card. So it was a fun way, not only for leaders, but for peers to reward each other for taking the little extra effort it takes to memorize for the year, the objective fun one that I wanted to mention with that. So we've talked about role clarity, we've talked about manager scope, and we've talked about communication practices, which primarily is repetition. Making sure that you're hitting the message multiple ways in order to get it across. So some of the signals. So how do you know if you've got an issue? And I just wanted to plant a few of these ideas to see what you think about it and kind of see if these land for you. These are the symptoms of what I've seen where you can tell people are maybe not understanding. I mentioned already this idea of that's not my job. That is a flag that there's some sort of communication issue. Also, if you have people saying, we need more communication, lots of times that's an organizational clarity issue. The flag is often they don't know what other people are doing, how their work fits, that sort of thing. So if you hear that question, dig in a little further to see what you can find out. The other thing is frequent escalation. So if things have a hard time getting done in your organization without the next level manager and the next level manager and the directors talking to the directors or whoever it is, if that's really the only way things get done in your organization, you definitely need to take a look at organizational clarity. Are people's roles clear? Is the work clear? Or is the deliverable clear? I mean, those sorts of questions can go a very, very long way. And then finally, if work is people are duplicating efforts, duplicating work, or there's a lot of drop balls, things are getting missed. Again, you've probably got an organizational clarity issue, either at a high level, like general communications, or at the job level, or even at the team level. How does this team work with that team? So, those are the types of things I've seen, and why it made my growth model is because over the years, I just think that it's easy to miss this. And oftentimes it's disguised as, like I said, other types of issues. People blame other issues like I need my goals, like I don't understand what's expected, or again, it's not my job is one of the ones that just I think is the most common. But if you're running into that, organizational clarity may be a place to take a deeper look. So, so that's what I've got for today. I want to make sure to just mention I am within days of launching my new website. I am so excited. This has been a labor of love behind the scenes. I'm so excited for it to come out. So it's www.thiel, talentstrategy.com. And on that, you're going to see all the services that I provide. The Growth Advantage is one of those. So that's the application of that model that I discussed within your organization to see if there's see where you're strong and where you're in good shape when it comes to retaining talent, and places that just need a little shoring up that could use a little help. So, which is what I'm here to do. So those types of services are clear there as well. I also am going to have a monthly newsletter coming out too. So if you go check out my website, which again should be launching the next day or so, be sure to sign up for my newsletter. I'd love to have you on that. And I share tips and tricks on that newsletter that I don't share on other social media channels. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, KJ. I see that you had a couple comments about repetition and how important that is. And I am so excited for the next time we're going to be talking about the W, which is work that works. And I'll get into that and more. That's not necessarily super clear, but it will be after my next live stream. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Please reach out and schedule some time with me if you'd like to chat. Thanks.